everyone, it's Nina. Thanks for joining me today for a very exciting release. We're going to be debuting a brand new collection of Simon Says stamp dies that work with Tim Holtz's brand new Stampers Anonymous release. And the best part about today's video is not only am I going to show you these fabulous new stamps and die sets, but I'm also going to be showing you some inspiration brought to you by me and also Sherry Carroll. So I hope you're ready for some ideas because these sets are going to be fantastic for creating anything from cards to tags to mixed media projects and more. So why don't we start first with Curiosity Shop. This is a fun one because it features a lot of great imagery and also this really cool typewriter, which I wanted to showcase specifically because we designed our Simon Says Stamp Curiosity Shop typewriter die set to include a slit that allows you to cut out the top of the typewriter and slip the piece of paper that's in the stamp set into it. So now you can create this really fun little interactive effect, which you can see showcased on this tag that I've designed. There are some great greetings in this set that are not only awesome for cards, but you can also use them for mixed media projects too. Things like Stay Curious, Lucky Day, etc. Now I did want to point out one fun thing. There's this number border in the stamp set, and our Curiosity Shop dies from Simon Says Stamp are designed to cut out the numbers all at once in that border. But if you want to use the numbers on their own, all you have to do is just take your scissors and trim them out. It's really simple to do. There's not too many connection points between the numbers, and that allows you to use them individually. So now you can make your own custom number assortment. There is a 0 in the stamp set and the die sets, so that allows you to make an infinity of different number assortments that you wish. Now, side note, I did want to show you this. We carry over at Simon Says Stamp these really awesome storage envelopes that are heavy duty, and they have a little flap on them that allows you to close the envelope. They work perfectly for storing Tim Holtz stamps, and there's enough room in those envelopes to store the coordinating dies too. So you might want to pick some of those up if you're purchasing any of the new Tim Holtz stamps or Simon Says Stamp dies. You might want to add a pack of those to your cart too. And all the products that I am using today are linked below in the video description if you're looking for anything, so make sure you check that out as we're going through this video. This abstract floral stamp set and our Simon Says Stamp abstract floral dies are stunning. The big bold blooms are so cool, and check out what Sherry Carroll made for this tag. Lots of bold color, those giant florals look amazing on here. And by having the dies, it allowed her to layer these in a beautiful way on top of that stenciled background, which by the way is one of the new stencils from Tim's Stampers Anonymous release. How about these giant numbers? These would be fantastic for making cool collages, backgrounds, or as the focal point for a card or tag. Our Simon Says Stamp paint by number dies work beautifully with this paint by number stamp set, and I really want to show you this fun tag that Sherry made. So she took the number 1 and the 0 to turn this into a tag for a 10-year-old, which looks super cool on top of this very colorful background using more of Tim's new Stampers Anonymous stencils. This would also look really cool on a card too. Forgotten Garden is so pretty. It's very delicate florals, reminds me very much of those botanical vintage prints that you see, and I wanted to use that as my inspiration for creating this card, which I'm going to show you how I made. So stay tuned, we're gonna make this card on screen. You'll notice there's a fun little texture in the background. I did use a new stencil from Tim Holtz's Stampers Anonymous release to make that pretty design. And by die cutting my flowers, I was able to get these really cool dimensional pieces on top of my card. And you'll also notice this fun little trim down along the bottom. That's also a brand new stamp set, which is crochet trims. And we have our Simon Says Stamp crochet trims dies, which allow you to cut all of these beautiful trims out. And there's a lot of ways you can incorporate them onto your projects. So for this tag, for instance, I used them as the background to create almost like banners behind my typewriter. I thought that would be very festive and go well with the birthday theme of the tag. But you can also use them as little accents too. So here I put it along the bottom of my Forgotten Garden images, and that gave me this really nice, elegant, lacy feel. So these two projects are the projects I'm going to be sharing with you today, and I'm going to walk you through how I made each of them. So I hope you're ready to create because these were fun to do. Now I'm going to start first with the Forgotten Garden set, and I'm going to take both the Forgotten Garden stamps and our Simon Says Stamp Forgotten Garden dies, And we're going to start first by stamping the images. I'm going to pick out these flowers here and I'm going to stamp them onto our Simon Says Stamp 120 pound white cardstock. I am using Intense Black ink for this because it's a really nice Copic friendly ink, and that's the markers I'm going to be using today to color my images. But that ink would also work well for any other medium you're working with too. So once I have my images stamped, we're ready to start coloring. And I love the detail of these. So I want to color the largest one to look like lavender. I thought that's what it reminded me of. And so I picked out some purple colors that I thought would go well together. And then I added some green for the leafy areas. That's going to give me these really nice large stems that's going to go in the center of my card. And then I'm going to surround it with these other pieces that are smaller. I did color in the tape for each of these flowers with an E81 marker. Just a little bit of light shading. I thought that would add some interest to the tape and also give it a worn feel. I'm going to use then some dark blues for this flower cluster. Then I also picked out some orange and yellow tones for this little blossom here. And then finally, for the 2 sprigs of greenery, I picked out a variety of teal markers, and I'm just going to intersperse those colors throughout the leaves just to give it some variation. Now I have all my pieces colored, we're ready to do some die cutting. So I'm going to take our Simon Says Stamp Forgotten Garden dies, and I am going to use some of our very, very low-tech tape to hold it in place while I run this through my die cut machine. And especially for the larger images, I do like to use more than one piece of tape, just so that way I know that my die is not going to shift as I run this through my die cut machine. So once I've ran that through, that gives me these amazing little floral pieces that I can now layer up on top of my card. I wanted to create that embossed detail, so I'm taking this feather stencil from the Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous collection, and I'm going to use it with my embossing mat inside of my die cut machine. That's going to allow me to emboss this paper with the stencil. So you lay the mat down first, then your paper, and then the stencil down on top of that, and you put your embossing plate on top of your entire sandwich. That gives you this amazing result, which allows you to get a totally different look with your stencils. Embossing with a stencil isn't as deep as an embossing folder, but it's still a really nice texture that adds some interest behind these flowers. And I am popping these flowers up with some foam squares, just so that way they have some dimension off of the background. I'm going to pick out the Crochet Trims stamp set, and I picked out this lacy image that I thought would look really pretty underneath the flowers. I'm going to stamp this onto some vellum paper, and I'm using Simon Says Stamp Clear embossing ink to stamp that image. And I did prep the surface of that paper with a powder tool prior to stamping, just to make sure that the powder only sticks to the stamped image. So I'm going to sprinkle on some white embossing powder from Simon Says Stamp. I'll tap off any excess, and then using my heat tool, I'll carefully go ahead and set this. I do like to let my heat tool heat up a little bit before bringing it over to the paper, just to help minimize the warping of the vellum, because vellum is very easy to warp. Now I'm going to bring in that coordinating die and run this through my die cut machine, and I am going to put a nice big piece of tape here across the center just to make sure that this doesn't shift. You could use 2 smaller pieces if you'd like, but that's allowing you to make sure that you know that the die is held in place and not going to shift while you're working. So I'm going to glue this along the bottom of my card. I am making a 5x7 card, and this panel that I'm working with is about 4x6, so a little bit smaller than the card base. I'm wrapping that lace around the edges just to make it look like it was actually a real piece of lace wrapped around my panel. I thought that would add some interest. And then I'm going to mount this piece onto some gold cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, and that's going to give me a nice little border around the edges of my paper. Now, if you want, you could cut the center of that paper out so that way you're not wasting all of it, but I didn't bother doing so. I'm just going to go ahead and trim the sides of my paper down so that I get that really nice little border. I did wrap a bit of twine around my card just to give a little bit more of a warmth to this piece. I was really going for that vintage botanical print look, which has a lot of neutrals, and it allows the flowers to be the focal point, and they also are very linear, usually lined up on the paper. So that's why I went the direction I did with this card. Now that greeting that I put onto my card, I did grab that from the Abstract Florals stamp set, and I just embossed that onto black cardstock. So now at this point, I'm just popping my panel up onto my 5x7 card, which is covered with a piece of ledger paper that I found in my stash. And that's just giving a nice neutral base to the background. My last finishing touch was to add some glossy accents to the tape. I wanted this tape to look real, and because our flowers are the focal point, adding a little detail like this makes a big difference. So I used that glossy accents to cover each of the tape pieces, and that gave them a little bit of a shine, just like a piece of tape would. And of course, that vintage color using the E81 marker to add a little bit of shading to the tape really made this feel authentic. I'm really happy with how this card turned out. I love the bright colors of the flowers popping up off of all those neutrals we have in the background. So now let's work on creating a tag with not only the crochet trims stamp set, but I'm also going to incorporate the typewriter from Curiosity Shop. So I picked out a variety of different Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated colors. You can see them on screen right now. And we're going to ink up our little crochet trims with these colors. Now I do find that the best way to pick up these stamps, because they are long and they have a tendency to wobble a little bit, is to lay them down on your paper first and then pick them up with either your clear block or the door of your MISTI. That allows you to make sure that the stamp stays nice and straight and it doesn't get any sort of funny wobbles in it. Now you also notice I'm not stamping the entire trim, and that's because I'm just stamping these onto a scrap of paper I had handy. I'm actually not going to need the full length of each of these trims, so I'm just using up a piece of paper that I had handy to create a shorter trim that I'm going to end up putting onto a tag. So I'm holding down my dies with some very, very low-tech tape. Again, you can use 2 pieces on either end just to help you make sure that you don't have any shifts when you run this through your die cut machine, or you can use one larger piece. I've run this through and that gave me all of these really fun, delicate die cuts that look amazing and would be so much fun to use on pretty much any project. And you can use these in so many ways. Now I pulled out the Curiosity Shop stamp set, and I'm going to use both the typewriter and the paper to create the focal point for my card. Now because this typewriter is super detailed and I'm not going to be coloring it, I decided to just stamp it with some VersaFine Clair ink, which is a nice dark black pigment ink, and that picks up a lot of the detail for this typewriter. I did pick out the happy birthday greeting from the stamp set as well, and I'm going to stamp that in the center of the paper. That's going to allow me then to go ahead and die cut each of these pieces with our Simon Says Stamp Curiosity Shop die set. And this typewriter die cut is fantastic because it die cuts a little slit across the top of the typewriter that allows you to slip this little sheet of paper into. That makes for a fun interactive element, which I love. So here's the slit, you can see it here, and then you just take your paper and you pop it in. It slides in and out really easily, and such a fun way to be able to add a nice little touch of unexpected surprise to something. So in this case, my tag is going to feature this fun little interactive piece. I'm going to glue all of my crochet trims together onto my tag, which I did make from some pattern paper that I found in my stash, just something neutral that I thought would be fun to have a little bit of a floral touch. These trims are kind of serving as banners in a sense. I wanted something a little bit more celebratory behind the typewriter, so I thought the trims would make a fun set of banners. Any excess that's hanging off of the edges, I will take my scissors and go through and just cut off so it's nice and flush with the tag. And so then that creates my background, which is super fun. My typewriter is going to go along the right-hand side here, and I'm just going to put a few pieces of foam tape on the back side of this typewriter so that way it's a little bit more dimensional. Just want to make sure that you don't put any tape in areas of where you want the paper to slide in and out of, so that way it doesn't impact how the mechanism works. So now that I have my typewriter attached, here you can see how fun it is to pull that little piece of paper out and reveal the greeting, which I think is super cute. I finished off this tag by just simply adding a bit of green ribbon to the top to tie in some of the colors that were in our crochet trims, and that's going to do it. So here you have a whole bunch of different ideas using not only these brand new Tim Holtz Stampers Anonymous stamp sets, but also our Simon Says Stamp branded dies that work perfectly with these stamps. You can find all of these products, the stamps and the dies, over at our store. You can buy them individually or as a bundle, which gives you lots of options for picking and choosing your favorites. I hope you were inspired by today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to check out all of the products that are linked below in the video description and to subscribe so that you don't miss any of our future videos. Thank you so much for joining me today, friends. I will be back soon to share more with you all, but until next time, have a wonderful day.
I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at SimonsSaysStamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.